A republic, if you can keep it. Benjamin Franklin's warning still rings true. But today, two people can look at our judicial system and see two different countries. One sees the rule of law being applied fairly, and another sees the capture of the justice system and the rise of fascism. So which is it? And more importantly, what should we do about it? In this episode of Terrified Nation, we slow down. We sort the signal from the noise, and we map a responsible path to both strengthen institutions when they're working and resist them when they're captured. This is how we practice real-world discernment, so our actions match our values. If you have felt pulled between hope and alarm, this episode is for you.
If you've ever felt fear, doubt, or despair about the future of our country, you're not alone. Terrified Nation is a podcast for those ready to face hard truths with open hearts. Hosted by Debilyn Molineaux, each episode explores how we can move beyond division and build a society rooted in care, courage, and connection. If this resonates with you, hit follow and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Now here's your host, Debilyn Molineaux.
When Benjamin Franklin exited Independence Hall in Philadelphia in 1787, a woman approached him and asked, "What have we got, a monarchy or a republic?" And he answered, "A republic, if you can keep it." Well, today, keeping it feels complicated. Two honest people can watch the same headline, the same protest, or read the same indictment and walk away with opposite conclusions. We're okay versus we're in free fall. So let's talk about why that happens and how then we can choose grounded action, not panic and not denial. Let's take a short look back. In school, many of us here in the States learned that King George III was the villain in our American Revolutionary story. In fact, the Declaration of Independence is a list of repeated injuries or grievances and usurpations. And for most Americans, this image stuck. But real history is messier. Modern biographies and his own writings suggest that King George was a more complicated figure, often constrained by his own parliament and the rule of law. He couldn't just do what he wanted. And it also shows, history and his own writing shows that he was more concerned or focused on preserving his empire than on crushing liberty, which of course is how we hear the story in the States. So, was King George a tyrant or a constitutional monarch? It depends on your vantage point. And that tension between competing interpretations of what happened never went away. We still live inside it. So what do you see? Well, let's name two common views that I hear all the time. View A, the rule of law is holding, if barely. The courts are functioning, elections are happening, power has been changing hands still in a non-violent way, even through stress and disruption. So if this is you, if this is your view, you probably feel called to defend judicial independence, to shore up voting rights, to insist on transparency and expand civic education. We need to be good citizens in order for the rule of law to continue holding. But let's look at view B. Perhaps you believe that fascism is taking root. You see captured courts, agencies are bending to partisan will, and leaders seem to be above the law. And if this is you, you likely feel called to expose corruption, withdraw legitimacy from these compromised systems, engage in protest or civil disobedience, and build alternative networks of accountability and trust. Organizing. Both sets of actions can be principled. The question is, what's true where you stand and what is yours to do? All right, let's take one big breath together. In and out. We have to remember, fear narrows our view and curiosity expands it. So here we are, two Americans looking at the same courthouse, the same headline, the same indictment. And we're walking away with opposite conclusions. One says, our system still works, see? And another says, the system is broken beyond repair. That's the tension that we are living in today. And it can be exhausting. But here's the thing. When our perceptions diverge this sharply, it becomes even more important to pause, take a deep breath, and practice discernment. So what is discernment? Discernment is looking at the information or evidence that we have and then making a choice. And discernment is a muscle. When the noise of our outrage culture is loud, we need tools to help us slow down and choose wisely. And I start for myself with 3 questions. What is true? In other words, what facts can be verified without spin? 2, what is propaganda? And who benefits if I believe this? And 3rd, this one's the hardest one for me, by the way. What is my fear projecting? In other words, how might my past or my echo chamber be coloring what I'm seeing? And from there, from asking myself those 3 questions when I'm having a reaction to something, from there, I move into 3 practical ways to test what I'm seeing and hearing. The first way is what I call the 2-source test. So imagine you scroll past competing claims about Charlie Kirk's legacy. One post says, he is a martyr for free speech. And another post says, he was a hate-filled figure who divided America. Before accepting either, I go looking for independent confirmation. Like I might check a balanced retrospective from a mainstream news outlet that names both his influence and his controversies. And then I look at a critical source that documents his rhetoric and the pushback that he faced. And if both of these sources agree on the core facts, that he mobilized conservative youth, that he provoked backlash for racially charged statements, I now have firmer ground. The extremes remain interpretations, not certainties. And this is the power of testing claims across at least 2 independent sources that often disagree with one another. You know, I'm not going to go to just alt-right or just liberal media. And let's not forget, I could also watch his videos for myself with the core facts in mind. And I did this. I discerned that Charlie Kirk used controversial statements to both bring more followers to him and also to highlight the incivility of the people who disagreed with him. And so what was his motivation in doing so? Well, I don't know. Neither do you. All right, let's move on to the second practical thing we can do to have better discernment. Let's talk about inside and outside mapping. Put your crayons away for this one. You just need a pen and a list. Because inside-outside mapping identifies reasonable actions you as a citizen or me as a citizen can take both inside and outside of our official institutional and government channels. So I'm going to use this example of the Epstein files. I really don't have any energy on the Epstein files myself, but I do believe in accountability of our elected officials and of people of wealth and power, as the majority of Americans do. So, what are the actions that I could take? Well, inside the system, I could read what's released, what's public already myself. I could support investigative reporters who are covering the story, especially those independent journalists. I could pressure my local officials to vote for their release. And from outside the system, one of the things I could consider is supporting survivor advocacy groups or amplify their voices on social media or contribute to their funds. I could join citizen-led projects that archive and annotate the Epstein files so the public can actually understand them. They're very complicated. I could help with crowdsourced fact-checking to push back against the false claims that will inevitably arise from this stupid conflict profiteers. I might organize a teach-in or discussion forum about what the Epstein files reveal and the larger systems of abuse that they are exposing or could expose. And lastly, I could pressure the institutions named in the files. These are the banks that moved his money or the universities and foundations that took his donations. And through petitions and shareholder activism or public campaigns, we, the citizens, can push for these institutions to face their ties and make real reforms. So identifying and considering reasonable inside and outside actions helps each one of us see where our own skills and values fit best. So whether we're pushing institutions to do their job or applying outside pressure where they fall short, these are the actions, these are the citizen-led actions that we can each do. In other words, inside-outside mapping is a good way to discern or choose how each of us might be involved in a role that fits us best. Now for the third practice of discernment. This is called the opposite lens conversation. So picture the indictment of James Comey. Like me, you might see it as proof that the justice system is weaponized. And a friend of mine might see the very same indictment as evidence that no one is above the law. So here's the practice. Sit down with them. It can be on Zoom, on a phone call, doesn't have to be, it can be in person, like have some really good coffee, but sit down with them and ask only questions, not gotcha questions, curious questions. No arguing, no debate with your own facts. Just listen with curiosity. You might ask, well, what do you see that makes you confident that the system is working or captured, depending on your perspective? You might ask, what would give you trust in the process? Or how do we know the Justice Department is independent? And as our friends respond, we must resist the urge to correct or counter. The goal is not to change their minds. It's to understand the picture that they're seeing. The goal is to be able to stand in their shoes for just a few minutes. And I just want to go off on a little tiny tangent because these difficult conversations are layered. They are about the content itself, but they're also about the emotions we have about that content and ultimately about the identity that we hold that has those feelings and those beliefs about the content. So keep that in mind when you're talking with somebody and experiencing a difficult conversation yourself. You're actually talking at three levels at the same time. So again, we just want to be able to stand in their shoes for just a few minutes. We're not going to change their minds, period. This is a really important part of reflective listening. The next step, after we've heard everything, we stood in their shoes for a few minutes, The next step is to simply mirror back what you've heard. It's harder than you think, but try it. So I could say to one of my friends, so you're saying you trust this decision because it shows that powerful people can be held accountable. I like that too, right? Or you're worried because the Justice Department might not be as independent as it seems. This doesn't mean that we have to agree. It just means that we're letting our friend or neighbor know that we understand. And when people feel understood, they stop fighting, they soften, and real exchange becomes possible. That's what we're shooting for right here. We may share deep concerns about selective prosecution, but now our discernment about what that is or looks like is sharper. We've stress tested our own perspective against another honest lens without collapsing into a shouting match. Disagreement is good for democracy. It's good for our republic. And this kind of oppositional conversation takes humility and discipline. And it can expand our own vision to help us see blind spots and sometimes open a small door of trust with someone that we assumed was unreachable. This is a good secret for Thanksgiving dinner, and that's coming up. All right, we have one more layer to talk about here, and that's psyops. Psychological operations, which is called psyops for short, are deliberate efforts to shape public perception, emotions, and behavior. And they are not just the stuff of spy movies. I wish they were. They can be as simple as a coordinated social media campaign to amplify outrage. We've seen that for the last 10 plus years. Or it can be very complex as domestic and foreign actors seeding false stories into our media system to destabilize trust. We've seen that too. So here's the key point. When we fight with each other about perspectives and truth, we are often doing the work of those who wish to destroy our constitutional republic. We're doing the work for them. We're hurting ourselves. Every time we slip into mutual contempt, we weaken our collective ability to respond, and bad actors gain ground without firing a shot. I have said many times lately, we are living inside of an information war. We just don't know it yet. And knowing this, though, doesn't mean that we have to live in paranoia. It means we pause, we breathe, we ask, who benefits if I react this way? And then we decide what's true and what deserves our energy. By staying steady and curious, we can deny the manipulators the chaos that they're trying to create, that they have created. And we can stop paying the conflict profiteers to continue their cycle of outrage. I cannot wait for that day. And know this too, discernment is not about choosing comfort. It is about clarity, so that when we act, we are standing on solid ground. All right, you're still with me? Well, we've outlined here today two responsible paths, and whichever path we take individually to strengthen existing institutions or resist the captured ones, there are additional guardrails to keep us aligned with a living representative democracy. These are the three that I follow. Commit to nonviolence, period. Number 2, act with goodwill for future generations. In other words, act as if your grandkids will read your social media posts, your texts, your emails, and your arrest records, because they might. Everything seems to live forever online these days. This last one, the third one, is the most important of all. Offer dignity for opponents, not enemies, opponents. Our fellow Americans are not our enemies, and we don't have to like someone to respect their humanity. There are a lot of people that I wish would be better humans in this way. A lot. So if your discernment says strengthen institutions, some things to consider might be volunteering as a nonpartisan poll worker, support court monitoring or court reporting projects by independent organizations, push your elected officials for sunshine laws and open data at your city and county and federal levels. Don't forget the states. You might mentor a young person in media literacy or civic skills. All of these things are going to strengthen our existing institutions. But if you've gone through this whole process and your discernment says, I have to resist the captured institutions, there's a different set of activities to consider, honorable activities. You might join or train with a nonviolent direct action group and learn about your legal boundaries of what you can and cannot do. You might document and report corruption or system abuses through credible, secure channels, whistleblowers. You might build mutual aid in your neighborhood, like get to know your neighbors, have a call list, share food, share rides, take care of each other's kids. So people are not forced to choose between surviving and their conscience. Make sure they know everybody has their survival needs met. And this last one is to support independent, largely local journalism, because they are not easily bullied. And we see a lot of bullying of major journalism right now, of national journalism. Both paths need each other. It's like a left wing and a right wing of a bird. They can't fly with only one wing. So if you feel called to reinforce the healthy structure, honor and respect those people who are creating the pressure from outside when our institutions are failing, because we need to reconstitute them with integrity. And in a functioning republic, this tension between supporting the healthy and hospicing the toxic is a creative action of citizens. It is not destructive. So here are a few closing thoughts. Franklin's challenge still stands: a republic, if we can keep it. And keeping it doesn't mean blind loyalty or gleeful demolition. It means each of us doing the hard inner work of discernment, choosing a clear path, and acting with courage and care for the sake of our shared future. And here's the truth. The fate of this republic won't be decided only in courtrooms or by politicians in Washington. It will be shaped in neighborhoods, in conversations, and in the daily choices of millions of people like us. I hope you'll look closely. What do you see in your community right now? And which actions do your beliefs call you to take this week? Don't put it off. Because when we step out of fear or anger or hopelessness and into discernment, we reclaim our power. When we refuse to turn on each other, we thwart those who act to see America fail. This is the strongest act of patriotism I have ever felt in my life, to not see my political opponents as my enemy, because that means that whoever's trying to kill us is going to win. I have to love my neighbor. And when we act with steadiness and goodwill and courage, we are keeping our republic. All right, that was a lot. If you've got a different take than what I've presented here today, I want to hear it. Please send a note to the show and tell me what you're seeing and what you're doing about it. You can contact me through terrifiednation.com. I hope you'll join me next time.
That's Terrified Nation, a podcast from American Future. If this episode moved you, please help others find it. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. early access to new episodes, become a paid subscriber at terrifiednation.com. Join us next time.